On point 2 is on the rise of racism against Indian origin professionals in America. And on point 3 is an exclusive interview with the Canadian journalist Daniel Boardman. Now let's take a quick look at the headlines. After India's successful Operation Sindoor, MOD sources reveal JEM and Hizbul Mujahideen shift bases to Pakistan's Khyber Pakhtunkhwa with support of Pakistan Army. Mehbooba Mufti urges Home Minister Amit Shah to review terrorist Yasin Malik's case on humanitarian grounds. Sam Pitroda's controversial remarks sparks row, says, I have been to Pakistan and felt at home. SC rejects plea against Karnataka government's invite to book a winner. Banu Mushtaq upholds Karnataka HC order in Dasara Rao. BJP makes sensational claim. Amit Malviya says UPA government arranged Yasin Malik's meeting with Hafiz Saeed in Pakistan in 2006. BJP MP Ravi Shankar Prasad takes on Rahul Gandhi over vote chori allegation, says Rahul wants to systematically destroy Indian democracy. Renowned Assamese singer Zubeen Garg passes away in Singapore after a scuba diving accident. Imran Khan alleges Army Chief Asim Munir inflicting mental torture on him and his wife Bushra Begum. Gen Z protesters in Nepal delete social media accounts as police closes in with arson investigations. The United States of America will revoke a 2018 sanction waiver that allowed India to develop the Chabahar Port in Iran. The United States administration said that the move to revoke sanctions exception was in line with President Trump's maximum pressure policy against the Iranian regime and its alleged terror funding. Beginning September 29th, persons and entities operating the Chabahar Port will face sanctions under the US-Iran Freedom and Counter-Proliferation Act, the US State Department said in a statement. The decision is extremely significant because it affects India's regional outreach and diplomatic balancing. India has already spent rupees 4,700 crore in the initial phase of the Chabahar project. Now let's look at why Chabahar matters to India. India's gateway to Afghanistan and Central Asia is Chabahar. Humanitarian and development commitments through Chabahar. Strategic counter to Pakistan's Gwadar port through Chabahar. Balancing between Washington and Tehran, it was Chabahar. Now, Ministry of External Affairs spokesperson said New Delhi is examining the revocation and its implication of Chabahar on India.
See, you would have seen the press statement which was issued by the US side yesterday on revocation of sanctions waiver that applies to Chabahar Port. We are presently examining the implications that this revocation has for India.
Now, positioned on the Gulf of Oman, the port is an important transit point for Indian products seeking entry into Afghanistan and Central Asia. And it is to be noted that the first thing which Taliban did when they started moving towards Kabul was to break the Delanj highway. I'll come to it a little later. That's the first thing they did. Chabahar is also a crucial link in the international north-south transport corridor. Recently, India held trade talks with Uzbekistan in Chabahar. Since Islamabad denies India transit rights, the port is a vital installation for sending goods, aid and investments to Central Asia. In May 2024, India and Iran signed a 10-year agreement for operations at Shahid Beheshti terminal of Chabahar Port. Besides a commitment to invest 120 million to acquire equipment, India offered a credit window of $250 million for developing infrastructure around the port. The state-owned India Ports Global Limited has managed the Shahid Beheshti terminal since 18. The Chabahar Port helps India carry out reconstruction projects and humanitarian outreach in war-torn Afghanistan. The initial waiver was provided by Trump administration, recognizing port's significance for Afghanistan's reconstruction and economic growth. New Delhi has used Chabahar to ship wheat, medicine and other essential supplies to Afghanistan, especially after Taliban takeover. If sanctions deter shipping companies, banks or insurers, India's ability to continue this humanitarian outreach will be compromised. Humanitarian aid is one of India's strongest diplomatic levers in Kabul. According to the MEA, India has used Chabahar Port to ship 2.5 million tons of wheat and 2,000 tons of pulses to Afghanistan. This includes shipping 75,000 metric tons of wheat as humanitarian assistance in 2020. Beijing operates Gwadar Port in Pakistan. Chabahar is the closest Iranian port to India and was developed by the New Delhi and Tehran to boost connectivity and trade ties. India's facility at the port acts as a counterweight to China's regional design, which is Belt and Road project. In absence of Chabahar, India-Iran relationship will come down to bare bone. Apart from North-South corridor and Israel's bombing of Qatar is also compromising the entire IMEC initiative which the Prime Minister had spoken about. Chabahar, on the other hand, is also India's answers to Pakistan's Gwadar Port, which I just said is operated by China. With sanctions risks now hanging over India's project, analysts warn that Beijing's position in the region could strengthen. A weakened Chabahar may leave Gwadar and by extension China as uncontested hub for regional connectivity. Chabahar historically was seen as a point when Pakistan did not exist, when there was only Hindustan, where the boundary of Hindustan would start. Chabahar. Cha means for and Bahar means spring. It means all through the year it is Chabahar, like spring. Now, the waiver to India during Trump's first term has allowed India to maintain a delicate balance, deepening its strategic security, partnership with US while keeping ties with Iran intact. Now, with the waiver gone, New Delhi could find harder to reassure Tehran of a long-term commitment without risking friction with Washington. This balancing act will determine whether India can continue investing in Chabahar or slows down its involvement. The fact of the matter is that Central Asian nations like Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan wanted to use Chabahar to access the Indian market. New Delhi will have to balance its relations with Iran and US. For that to continue, trade negotiations are going on. So the first question is, what is the implication of this decision on India in terms of trade, strategic affairs and defense? On this, I am joined by Ambassador Bhaspati Mukherjee, former Indian diplomat. Thank you so much, madam, for joining me on this conversation. Jain Dasgupta, former ambassador to WTO. Thank you so much, sir. And Major General Rajan Kochar. Thank you. Ambassador Mukherjee, first to you. What is the implication of this decision on India, which comes in middle of our trade negotiation, which is already happening? Madam.
It would appear to me to be another way to put pressure on us. On one hand with regard to Russia and on the other hand with regard to Iran. It also shows a clear Trump administration bias in favor of Pakistan against India as far as our strategic posturing is concerned to maintain the balance, as you were saying. Now, you're talking about the importance of Chabahar Port and its historical importance. You're absolutely right. We have invested a lot in Chabahar precisely for the reasons that you outlined, and we have done so with the full knowledge of Washington. And actually, in Trump's first administration, which continued during Biden, the Americans were broadly in favor of our developing Chabahar because it also was able to provide connectivity to Central Asia, which wanted to reach out of its so-called geographical isolation towards India. And as you rightly pointed out, as PM had announced in the G20 summit, which now seems so far away, the IMEC corridor and the initiative. Now, as far as the sanctions are concerned, of course, we have Ambassador Das Gupta, who's an expert on WTO. These sanctions are totally illegal because they are not sanctions to be legal have to go through UN Security Council. These are all unilateral sanctions. But in the era of Trump, what matters is might is right. So, might is right means whoever wields the sword has the power. That's the way President Trump wields power. So he is trying once more to bully India so that we would give him some concessions on the ongoing trade talks. I think that if we have a breakthrough on the 50% tariff, as now seems possible, we may be able to come to some diplomatic solution on what is announced on Gwadar, on Chabahar.
Okay. Okay.
It doesn't mean that we would have to maneuver very delicately because whichever Indian firm deals with Gwadar post these sanctions would face the full might of US sanctions, which could destroy their business elsewhere. So we would have to think this out very carefully, MEA and MO, Ministry of Commerce, and look at the way out. But I think that it's an additional pressure point on us at a time when we are trying to find some kind of a trade deal.
Okay. Ambassador Das Gupta, your opening comments, how does it affect us? How does it affect India-Iran relationship? Does it come down to bare bone without Chabahar?
Well, I'm entirely in agreement with Ambassador Mukherjee. I think this was meant not so much against India, but against Iran, to put the maximum pressure on Iran, as has been described. So, they will not have access to the Central Asian republics. Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, they are all interested in the Chabahar port because, of course, the railway line has not been built northwards, and a road link has also yet to come up to world standards. But basically, it connects, if it had been allowed to continue, it would have connected to the international north-south corridor and all the way to Russia. So I think this is one of the things which the Americans are now jettisoning, the issue about providing aid to Afghanistan by India. That is now been set aside completely. And in this context, I think President Trump's statement about trying to reclaim Bagram Air Base in Afghanistan, because it's just 1 hour away from China's nuclear installations, that also is something which needs to be taken into account. So it is about squeezing Iran, basically, and no care at all for India's strategic concerns.
Ambassador Das Gupta, isn't that preposterous? As a journalist, I had the privilege to cover Afghanistan a number of times. I even traveled to Bagram, and I almost did a stupid thing without telling the Indian embassy. I traveled all the way from Kabul to Mazar-e-Sharif, and then came back without informing them when JP Singh was the political attaché there, because I realized that Shiv Shankar Menon is landing there. So, and saw the Bagram. I would say, who's going to give Bagram to the Americans? And secondly, sir, on a very serious note, North-South Corridor, our Kaladan project, which is the connectivity for Northeast, IMAC, it seems that all of them, because of international issues, Myanmar regime, or the way Israelis and Americans have bombed Tehran and then now Qatar, is having an impact on our foreign policy and our positions in West Asia, on our imagination, how we conceive our relationship with all these countries there, sir.
I entirely agree with you. The bombing of Qatar, I think, has primarily been behind this agreement between Saudi Arabia and Pakistan. And it has very deep security implications for India and for the terrorist activities which Pakistan carries out in Kashmir and in other parts of India. So this again would have opened up the Central Asian republics, from their feeling of isolation, and they would have had access to the sea. But that is not to be for the moment, because the Americans have very clearly stated that this Iran Freedom and Counter-Proliferation Act, waiver, which is running out on the 29th of September, any person or entity which is involved in the running of the Shahid Beheshti port will also be subject to sanctions. So Indian Global Ports Limited, which runs this port, is of course a government of India entity. We will have to pull out. I don't think we have the choice, because sanctions will mean it will have a lot of implications for the personnel as well as for the entity itself. So I think Ambassador Mukherjee is absolutely right. This has not moved through the UN process. This is a unilateral sanction imposed by the US, which it has been doing, all these years. So we will unfortunately have to abide by these sanctions, and I think for the time being, we will have to discontinue our engagement with the Chabahar port and its development.
Okay. General Kocher, its implication in context of defense, our strategic posture, our strategic maritime posture, sir?
You see, this is as far as the defense is concerned, I don't think it's much of a concern for us, because with Iran or with Afghanistan or with these kind of countries, we don't have much of defense deals or defense cooperations. But from the strategic point of view, yes, it is going to matter a lot, because Gwadar was one strong focal point for China here to establish its supply chain hegemony in the Indian Ocean, and we saw Chabahar as an alternative to us, because in case we have to project ourselves as a soft power to the Central Asian republics, Afghanistan, even if you remember humanitarian aid, we are not able to move by road through Pakistan if we have to look at Afghanistan. Chabahar was one important port for us, and that is why we were keen on developing that port. It actually gave us a leeway straight into the Central Asian republics, and as you mentioned, the North-South transport corridor. So I think this move by the United States is going to hurt India. It may be targeting Iran as such of its maximum pressure policy, but at the same time, it is going to hurt India because of the very large amount of investments already made, and there is no going back on it. I think diplomatically, we have two diplomats here. They should actually suggest to us how diplomatically and overreach to the United States can be made, possibly to gain some time, 3 to 6 months, because 29th September is too short a time for us to draw back everything from there, because there are legal issues involved here. There are contracts which have been concluded, and contracts which are underway. And if these contracts are not met, it will have legal implications. So I think it's a very, very larger perspective we'll have to get into, and Ministry of External Affairs as well as the Ministry of Commerce and ports, all these ministries will have to get together to formulate a strategy right now how to tackle these sanctions, and possibly ask for the United States for some more time. And last point is that it's extremely important to understand now where our relationship with the United States stands. Because at the drop of the hat, we are seeing tariffs are being imposed. At the drop of the hat, we are seeing waivers are being taken off. And I won't be surprised if that CAATSA thing also comes up with Russia as far as the S-400 is concerned, because we still have 2 squadrons to come from Russia as far as our deliveries of S-400 is concerned, and we are also looking at S-500 from Russia. So this Katsa thing also can play out in the forthcoming times. So I think we'll have to have a relook at our foreign policy with the United States, because these kind of waivers are extremely fragile, as I can make it out, that at the drop of the hat you accept it, at the drop of the hat you revoke it, but it has very large economic implications and implications on the foreign policy of a country.
Ambassador Mukherjee, this is pure play gundagardi. This is like a worst form of McCarthyism, you know, at display at international forum. The country which is supposed to be part and parcel of building a rule-based order has broken it just for its benefit. So in this evolving new world order, what are the Indian options, madam?
Well, you know, living in Delhi as I do, there is this old Haryana addict which says,
Jiski lathi usi ki bhais.
So that is what President Trump's policy is. And I can straight away say that S-400 is what the Indian armed forces have asked for. We will never back down on S-400 or S-500. They proved their utility in Operation Sindoor. We have a very hostile neighborhood. They can do whatever they want, but we will never back down on S-400, S-500. Chabahar is different. Chabahar, I completely agree that we can go in for a pause and negotiate from behind, because this step that they have taken is intended on one hand to pressure Iran, on the other hand to pressure us to give them more concessions on agriculture, etc., which they are demanding, because there is an agreement. That agreement, trade agreement between India and US, as Mr. Das Gupta knows better than me, has been ready for signature for the last 4 weeks. Trump has turned it down out of pique because we refuse to accept his positioning that he was responsible for putting a stop to Operation Sindoor. It's as simple as that. Otherwise, there is nothing to negotiate. It's all there. And the American negotiators have said they are okay with it. But he wants to squeeze more concessions out of us. This is a way to squeeze concessions out of us. So first we have to go through the trade deal and go slow on Chabahar, because it doesn't matter. We could always negotiate with those with whom we've signed a trade agreement and say that this has happened. We are trying to get some time from the Americans, etc. Because 29th September is just a few days away. And this is ridiculous. Usually you give a country at least 3 months time to work something out. But we would have to stop in Chabahar, because Chabahar is not as important to us as S-400. We would have to negotiate. But in my opinion, we could perhaps come to some agreement on S-400, because the deal which has been signed between Saudi Arabia and Pakistan will not please either Trump or Israel, because there Pakistan has promised its nuclear assets to Saudi Arabia. For what? Which country is likely to attack Saudi Arabia? It is an anti-Israeli step. That's not going to please Trump. So we would have some diplomatic space to maneuver in a very fast developing situation. And the first thing we need to do is to avoid any public discussion with Trump or his acolytes on this matter. Okay. They want to pass into a debate. We will not debate them. We will do everything behind the scenes.
Okay, Ambassador Dasgupta, then where does it leave India-Iran relationship? A lot of people would say, like for example, you spoke about entire West Asia. We came out very strongly after Qatar was bombed. You know, they hit the ball out of the park. A lot of experts say when Israelis bomb them, they bomb the negotiators. So where does it leave our historical relationship with Iran?
I think it is indeed in a very delicate position, because Iran has been bombed by the US, and they may have expected far stronger reactions from India, but it was not possible for us to come out very openly on that, though we have, I think, condemned it. But Iran would have liked something on the lines of what the Chinese or the Russians or the Pakistanis have done, which was not possible. Now, what we have to do really is to lie low for the time being and play the Gwadar card to the US, saying that, we can give you guarantees that there would be no arms which would be sent to the Iranians through Chabahar Port, because we are going to manage it. And we will use it only for the time being for channeling humanitarian aid and food items and medicines, etc., to Afghanistan, which will improve not only India's standing, but the US standing also, because it has allowed it. So I think with this kind of a guarantee, the US may relent, especially because it will only help in strengthening China is in the Persian Gulf. The other point I wanted to make is that this Chabahar, I think, $120 million is okay. We may have to forego it or forget about it for the time being, because President Trump is not going to be there forever. The point is that this should not be traded off against this, the red lines that we have in agriculture or in other things about not buying Russian oil, etc., which is a separate issue altogether. And I entirely agree with Ambassador Mukherjee. S-400 is non-negotiable. S-500 is non-negotiable. We will buy whichever country offers us the best equipment, and we are in a very, very hostile neighborhood, and nuclear armed neighbors, two of them. So we need the best protection possible. We will do whatever it takes to get these defensive systems, and also other missiles and other things which we require for offensive purposes.
Okay, let me take a close.
I think there should not be any trade-off against this Chabahar thing for lifting of the sanctions.
General Kocher, last 25 years have been very warm when it comes to America and India, and the Gen Zs and the millennials have only seen that. From a defense perspective, because I'm taking a closing statement from you, sir, how would you describe India-Russia defense relationship vis-a-vis India-US relationship? Because the younger generation, for example, people who work in a newsroom, they have an idea of what US-India relationship is post-1991. So how do you define India-Russia relationship in terms of defense?
A very good question, Karthikeyan. India-Russia relationship is based on trust. It is based on shared values and common perspectives. Today, 70% of our legacy equipment is Russian in origin, and Russians have never let us down. Even today, if we have asked for transfer of technology, the AK-203 rifle is being manufactured in India with 100% transfer of technology. Do we get this kind of your relationship with the United States? No, we don't get that, because transfer of technology is never shared by the United States. A second important aspect is when we talk about the next generation of fighter aircraft, and we are quite keen on Su-57 also coming to India. Russia has even volunteered to share this 100% technology with India. As a matter of fact, the manufacturing of this aircraft will also be done in India. Does the US do the same with the jet engine on 404 and 414? No. So we can surely say that right from the 1971 war, when the Russians came to our aid and the 7th Fleet was intercepted by the Russians, Russians have stood by India, come what may, in whatever kind of circumstances. So under no contingencies or possibilities or scenarios, we must leave the Russian friendship for the United States, because it's a time-tested one. It is stable, it is robust, and not only in the field of defense. You can see the space, the energy everywhere. we are in collaboration with our Russian friends. And during my 37 years of service in the Indian Army, I have interacted with them, and I have always found that Russia has been a dear friend of India.
I would say that you know, one can also find a lot of Russian men who have actually settled in Vladivostok. When Prime Minister went there, I saw it for myself, you know, and it was such an eye-opener. Thank you all of you for joining me on this conversation. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Mr. Das Gupta. Thank you, General Kocha. So this was on point 1. On the on point 2, we'll talk about the rising instances of racism against Indians in America, but after a short break.
Dreaming about me.
Love is to get lost in the look. Unlimit Love. B6 Pack 2 starts at 21.9 lakh. Mahindra Electric Origin SUVs.
Mount, India's #1 brand for roof and wall puff panels. Roofing experts for houses, cold storages, warehouses, resorts and all commercial buildings. Holds 2 world records for manufacturing 1,20,000 square feet of puff panels in just 24 hours and constructing 1,20,000 square feet of PEB building in only 64 hours. Mount, India's pride honoured in the Parliament of UK.